Golic and Smetty here. Stop it, Jess. Just stop it. Welcome to another edition of Golic and Smetty. I am Mike Golic Sr. She is Jess Smetana, and she will be my roommate coming up this weekend. Looking forward to that. Looking forward to hosting you and your boyfriend. That will be nice here in Notre Dame before we get to Notre Dame and Clemson. I already know. I don't even have to ask. I already know that you're going to bring some goodies for me.
Oh my gosh. I actually wasn't planning on it.
Oh, Jess, come on.
Well, I'm not going to be like staying at my parents' house or anything the night before. But now that you mention it, I'm going to have to whip something up, aren't I?
Either that, Jess, or you could pull it off. Buy something at the store, take off the, put it in a baggie and say you made it. You could do that.
I'll get something from Martin's and
there you go.
You won't know the difference.
I will not know the difference. All I know is I'll be getting a treat, and that's all that matters to me. So we definitely are gonna jump into college right now. We're gonna talk to Jared Carrabis from DraftKings. He has a couple of pods out. Baseball is Dead and the Jared Carrabis podcast. So with two, as of the taping of this, there's 2 games down in the World Series. It's 1 each. In that one, Game 3 was postponed. So we'll talk to Jared in a little bit about that and some other things going on in baseball. But any series that we talk about, Jess, outside football is only 1 game, but I always want to see 7 games. So no matter what, I'm hoping for a 7th game in the series, which I think, unfortunately for baseball, is going to be on Sunday night now with the postponement until they'll go up against Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, it's unfortunate it's going up against Sunday Night Football, but I do think Sunday is a great sports watching day. So I still think a lot of people will tune in if it does go to that. And like you said, Mike, I mean, Game 7s in any playoff series, people are going to automatically watch, even if you don't really have any skin in it. But can you imagine if we did a 7-game Super Bowl playoff series? Like, if we played 7 Super Bowls, that would be awesome. Why don't we do that?
It'd be a lot of pain for the players, I'll tell you that much. I couldn't imagine playing a whole season and then a 7-game, potential 7 more games.
Okay, let's shorten the season and make we'll go back to 12 games in the season, and then every playoff series 3 games, and then the Super Bowl 7-game series. It might not make it to 7 games, Mike, but how fun would it be to have the 2 best teams? Like, do you think the Rams and the Bengals finish the way they did last season if they're playing 7 games? I feel like the Bengals sneak a couple wins in there.
I gotta believe too, if you did that, there'd probably be a couple of blowouts too, where when you're playing 7 games, something's going to go wrong in some of these games, so you might get a couple of duds. But that would be wild. If you could guarantee the owners would not lose any money, they'd be open to anything. When you say cut the season
they all
shorter,
want more football,
it's always when they're in the owner meetings and somebody is talking about something along these lines, all they hear is want until how much money am I making? Then their ears perk up. So
I agree with you. It's a terrible idea, but
it's fun to think about though. Except if I was still playing. How much it would hurt. It's like Stu Gott's talking about changing baseball rules and such, and how ridiculous he sounds doing that at times. But that's just another day for Stu, really. So before we get to baseball, we'll talk a little NFL, little racing as well. College football, Jess. Listen, all of you Notre Dame haters out there, I know you tune into this because a lot of times you tune in if you love something or hate something. Notre Dame gets a big win on the road at Syracuse, which was a worrisome-looking game. Syracuse had been undefeated going into last week's game at Clemson, and they played Clemson very well in that game. I think lost by, 6 points or a touchdown. It was a good game, and it was in Clemson, so there was a bit of worry, I'm sure, from Notre Dame fans because you don't know which Notre Dame team you're getting. If they're playing at their best, they can compete. If they're not, we have seen that they lose to teams they should not be losing to. But right from play one, a pick 6 right out the gate, Jess. While there was a little bit of time in that second half where Syracuse started closing the gap and we were doing that thing again, Notre Dame, pulled that one out and won pretty much going away.
Mike, there was also another punt block. Notre Dame, I think, has 5 punt blocks now on the season, which is awesome, because now even if the punter on the other team isn't getting blocked, they're scared to punt. So it impacts every single punt play, which is, I think, really cool. And special teams, like, that hasn't been a big Notre Dame strong point, I think, over the last few years. So it's cool that that's now something that fans can look forward to. But it was such a fun game to watch. Like you said, it got close. It was 24-17 in the third quarter. Syracuse's quarterback got hurt in the second quarter. And then their backup came in, and their backup, I mean, he threw some pretty dangerous balls. One of them ended up getting picked off, but he also had like a level of kind of explosiveness that I think scared fans a little bit. Like, he was able to move the chains on his feet. And so it was not a completely stress-free game like, the BYU and the North Carolina games were for most of the second half, but it was still, I think, impressive. Notre Dame was able to finish it out. They ended up winning by, 17 points, I think. So it was fun to watch, and a ranked win is a ranked win. I don't think it matters how Syracuse finishes the season.
Right.
Notre Dame needed that. They've won 5 of the last 6 games. If it weren't for the Stanford game, that really is inexplicable. I mean, we're talking about a completely different set of circumstances here heading into November. So I thought it was really fun.
Yeah, you're right about Stanford. That was inexplicable. I mean, that's a tape you just burn and throw away and say, how in the hell did that happen? But now there's Clemson coming to town. We'll see again. So we're taping this before the committee meets for the first time. So by the time everybody is listening to this, the first committee rankings will be out. Clemson will probably be 5, 6 at the lowest, I would imagine. They'll be outside of the top 4, but they'll be right there. And we'll get into that because obviously right out of the gate, 1 and 2, unless Ohio State's 1. I think Tennessee might be 1 and Georgia might be 2 or vice versa. They're playing this week. So, I mean, it's all going to change immediately. So the thing about Notre Dame, though, Jess, is they're going to have to be able to run the ball. They ran the ball 56 times for 248 yards against Syracuse. They're not a team really built to come back from being down a couple of scores. The passing game just isn't that good. So that's going to be the key to go against Clemson is don't be falling, behind by a couple of scores and have to throw your way back in. I think Notre Dame would still struggle a bit there. The defense has been playing better, and the run game has been incredible. They held the ball for almost 15 minutes more than Syracuse. It's a great recipe, and it doesn't take rocket science to say this is what you need to do, but you have to go out and do it. So that's the fingers crossed, kind of watching is that running game works and the defense plays the way they've been playing.
Yeah, and I don't know if that recipe will work against Clemson's defense. I think it's going to be a really difficult matchup. And like you said, I mean, do you know what Drew Pine's final stat line was for this game? It wasn't good.
It still wasn't. He's still throwing in under 50%, is he not?
It was 9 for 19, 116 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. Notre Dame's third string quarterback came in for a couple series at the end, but didn't throw the ball. So I think, Drew Pine has struggled at times. There have also been stretches where he's played really well. And I think like him getting more confidence in the pass game, maybe that'll happen more progressively throughout the season, or maybe this is just what it is. And there isn't we've gone past the point where there's going to be like a breakout star in the wide receiver room. There's really just Michael Mayer and a few guys that are going to contribute. And that's okay if you're a 7 or 8 win team. If you want to beat Clemson and USC and finish November 4-0 though, you're going to have to be perfect everywhere else. So I think the Clemson matchup is going to be really telling of where things go from here for the rest of the season. Notre Dame still should finish with 7 wins and a bowl game.
Yeah.
But if you're a Notre Dame fan, you really want them to knock off at least one of these teams, these ranked teams in the last month of play. So I guess we'll see what happens this weekend, Mike. You and I will both be at the game.
Yep.
We will also be roommates, like you mentioned.
Yes, we will.
The forecast looks very nice. I'm sure there will be a million Clemson fans there. So
they'll travel. They'll travel well. I agree with that.
I think it's going to be a fun one.
And I think you're 1,000% correct in the fact that this is where Notre Dame is right now. Unless you get that exception to the rule and Drew Pine and the receivers have an unbelievable game, that as I said, that would be more the exception than the rule. Notre Dame is more that running and defensive team. So we'll see. We'll see what the recipe is for next year. Too many games to go this year just to worry about that now. but you kind of know what your identity is, and you said what it is, and you're right. This is who they are, and this is how they have to win. But it'll be electric, Aaron. And I like what Marcus Freeman said. He said, listen, this isn't David versus Goliath. We're two blue blood teams, Clemson and Notre Dame. He said the thing about us is if we play like we're capable of playing and played at times this year, we could win this game. If we play like we've played a couple times this year, we could lose this game, so that's where Notre Dame is right now, is which version are you going to get? So, and I think he's absolutely right, which now leads into, as I mentioned, I think Clemson will be 5. I think it'll be some variety of Georgia, Tennessee, Ohio State, and Michigan in the top 4 as far as this is the first committee. And I'll say it again, when I'm out of the media business, I want to be on this 13-person committee. I would love that because you just watch a ton of tape, or at least I hope they're doing that.
I hope so.
And I love doing that. I get to sit around, watch tape, and eat catered food. I mean, that would be just awesome.
I agree.
I am hoping someday to be on that. But so I think that'll be the basically anywhere in the top 4. And what I'll say right out of the gate, just for the top 4, it doesn't matter. Because Ohio State and Michigan are playing at the end of the year, and Tennessee and Georgia are playing this weekend. So It's already going to change. To me, the biggest thing about the first rankings coming out is not the 4. It's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, depending on the records. So it's going to let you know what the committee thinks of some of these teams right now. Like Alabama has a loss. Rarely do they have a loss when you get to the first rankings. Where do they put them? Are they 5? Are they ahead of Clemson, who's undefeated, which would let Clemson know what the committee thinks of them? Where does TCU go, sitting at 8-0 right now? So to me, that second tier is one of the most important things tonight, because it kind of lets you know forgetting what we think or the AP thinks and all that, doesn't matter. It's what these 13 people think about your team.
I have a question for you, Mike, heading into this weekend. Like you said, Georgia and Tennessee will be playing each other. The Notre Dame-Clemson game has definite playoff implications for Clemson. Notre Dame is obviously out of it and has been out of it. Yep. But there's another big game between ranked teams, and that is Alabama versus LSU. And that is an SEC West Division rivalry game at LSU. How much do you think Notre Dame fans are rooting for Alabama and against Brian Kelly in this game?
I think a lot. I think they're going to be I think there's a lot of Notre Dame fans who have not been happy with Brian Kelly that are like, oh man, he's having a decent year. It's a big win for them last week. But listen, they got that the Jaden Daniels kid from Arizona State, who I wasn't sure about. And at times he's inconsistent, but when he's on, and he's played well for them in their last game, and he's going to have to play really well in this game. And Alabama, we know, already has a loss. We know their defense can give up some points for sure. I still like Alabama in this game, but it's a big game. LSU has put themselves in a nice position. But, you start looking at games now as opposed to then who gets into the SEC championship, because you always know there's usually 2 teams that can get in from the SEC. God forbid you say 3 teams possibly getting in from the SEC. It would be
what if there's 3?
Yeah, 3 from the SEC and probably 1 from the Big Ten. You'd have all the 3 other Power 5s getting shut out. Would be unbelievable. We got a long way before that happens, but this Tennessee-Georgia game, man, Tennessee can put up a ton of points with Hendon Hooker, who I think is the leading contender for the Heisman right now. And while Georgia's defense isn't, I don't think, as good as it was last year when they had just stud after stud on that defense, and a lot of them are playing in the NFL now, they're still, I think, second in points allowed at just over 10. I think they're either leading or second in yards allowed. So, I mean, it is another stifling defense against an offense that is unbelievably potent. So this is going to be a lot of fun to watch.
I'm trying to think out a scenario where we get 4 SEC teams in. So what if LSU had not lost to Florida State in week 1 and their only loss is to Tennessee, and then they beat Alabama. But then Alabama has two losses. So but they're Alabama, so maybe they still, But then LSU and Tennessee or Georgia play in the SEC. I'm trying to think. Like, I know there's a way, and when it's a 12-team playoff, there probably will be multiple years where there's 3 or 4 SEC teams in. But that is kind of the fun part about November, is that a lot of these really good teams will have to play each other, and then there's also some blowouts in the conference championship weekends, and those aren't as fun, but.
And listen, there's blowouts in the semifinals. Everybody keeps, bragging on Notre Dame because they've gotten blown out in the semifinals. Other teams have gotten blown out in the semifinals. And
Oklahoma,
I'll say this again.
Michigan State.
The 2 years Notre Dame got blown out in the semifinals, 1 year it was Alabama, 1 year it was Clemson. Both those teams in the championship game beat their opponent to win the national title by more than they beat Notre Dame in the semis.
Right.
So all you
Notre Dame covered. So
it's exactly right. So all you Notre Dame haters can stick it, as far as I'm concerned. That's just me. Sorry about that. But I am looking forward to this weekend. And again, you're right. When they go to 12 teams, you'll get 3 or 4 SEC teams for sure. You'll start to get 2-loss teams in there because we still have never had a 2-loss team in the playoffs, and I doubt that's not going to happen this year. I don't think again. So again, first rankings, as when you hear this, the first rankings will be out. The first 4 again, I don't think matter because they're playing one another. So that's going to change. So we'll see. And Jess and I get to hang out for the weekend and watch Notre Dame hopefully beat Clemson. That will be. Are there any requests for you or your boyfriend when you come to the house? Do you have like a rider list or anything like that?
Yes, I do. Blue M&Ms in a bowl in my room, please. Mike, honestly, we're pretty low maintenance people. We enjoy good coffee, and that's really all we need.
When you say good coffee, I have basically a Keurig, and is that not good
enough?
Coffee?
It's good enough.
It is good enough because when my kids are here, when my friggin' kids are here, Sydney, Jake, and Mike, or individually, they go out every morning and buy coffee somewhere. My coffee maker is not good enough for them.
I mean, you've spoiled them, Mike. This is your own fault. I don't know who raised these children. You did. So
well, I'll blame that on my wife because she's not here.
That works too.
Her. All right, so the blue M&Ms, and you'll accept our coffee. We have a bunch.
I accept your coffee.
Okay, all right, I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to it, and we're also looking forward to the rest of the World Series. And so we figured we had to talk some baseball again. As the taping of this, the series is tied 1-1. So right now we want to talk to DraftKings. Has a couple of pods. Baseball is Dead and Jared Carrabis podcast. Jared Carrabis is going to join us. All right, Jared, so we're 2 games into the World Series. As the taping of this is going on, they're going to play Game 3, but we had the postponement of Game 3 pretty close to the start of Game 3. What was your thoughts about it? I think it was a little over an hour that they decided because of the weather forecast to postpone the game. What did you think of how close it was to the game?
Yeah, I mean, I woke up in the morning and I tweeted, "Oh, we got baseball tonight." And then I looked at the forecast and I was like, I don't know if we're going to have baseball tonight. It did not look very friendly. Pretty much all day we kind of knew that there was no pocket to get the game in. So I don't know why they kind of waited around to make the decision. I mean, ultimately they made the decision to postpone the game. But, at no point after waking up yesterday did I think that we were going to play baseball.
It's a bummer, too, because the Monday Night Football game was so terrible that the head-to-head probably wouldn't have even mattered.
And it would have lined up perfectly because the Eagles were playing Thursday night, and that was the one off day this week. So now, poor Philly fans have to make a decision. Do I watch the Eagles on Thursday night, or do I watch the Phillies in the World Series? It's just terrible, terrible times.
So what do you think? I know Rob Manfred was asked about this. So now there'll be a game on Thursday for when Thursday Night Football is going on. And if there's a Game 7, it'll be Sunday night up against the NFL as well. Your thoughts on that and that decision that was made?
Yeah, I mean, I think because I was in Philly for the NLCS. I'm not in Philly for the World Series, but I was following along for the tweets, and people were saying it was absolutely downpouring. So I think they're kind of they're stuck with what they had to work with. I don't think that it's something that they could have played through because you're never going to win going up the NFL. Football is king. It is what it is. Like as a diehard baseball guy, it pains me to say, but you're never going to be able to compete with the NFL. I did see that the ratings were up from last year, and they're up from the year before that, which is surprising because you would think with all the cord cutting going on that ratings would be going down regardless of who the matchup was. Like that part of it wouldn't matter. But the ratings are actually better this year than they were last year, and they were pretty good. I think they were better. I want to say the World Series ratings were better than the NBA Finals ratings. So, for a sport that's quote-unquote dying, it's not great when you have to go up against the NFL, but I also saw a lot of complaining about the quality of the games this past Sunday. So if you're a sports fan, especially if you're a sports bettor, then I think a lot of people are like, yeah, I'm going to tune into Game 7 of the World Series potentially over some matchup on Sunday night that I don't even know who the Sunday night game would be, but I feel like Game 7 of the World Series grabs you even if you're not a diehard baseball fan.
Yeah, I'm looking real quick that it's Tennessee at Kansas City, so yeah, we'll see, but it's always a tough matchup. But you're right, I was reading the same thing about Game 1 and the rating. So looking at the two games, you see Houston in the first game jump out to a 5-0 lead. Phillies come back and win it in 10. They jump out to a 5-0 lead in Game 2, and the Phillies can't come back in this one. So kind of your takeaway, I think most people felt Houston the better team going. Correct me if I'm wrong, of the playoff teams, the Phillies had the least amount of wins, I think, at 87, yet here they are in the World Series, but down 5-0 in both games. Is that kind of a prelude to think of what may happen, in the rest of these games, that Houston may just be too good and they jump out to these leads?
Yeah, I mean, that's essentially what I expected going into this World Series. I picked the Phillies in 7, and that's really just a coin flip. Only because I was in Philly for these NLCS games, and that ballpark is going to make a huge difference, but I think the question is how big of a difference can it really make when the Houston Astros, they get booed loudly everywhere that they go. Yeah. Like, I don't know. Like, Philly fans can really make it hard on opposing teams and players, but I think the one team that might be immune to that would be the Houston Astros, because they're like, this is like a regular Tuesday for us. Like, we kind of were used to this. But, yeah, I think in terms of surprises, I was more surprised the whole Justin Verlander in the World Series thing. It makes no sense. Like, this guy is a generational talent. We're talking about one of the greatest pitchers of all time.
Multi-generational.
Yeah, and like when you think about, Clayton Kershaw gets a lot of flack because he underperformed in the postseason. David Price was another guy that got, a lot of media attention for not performing well in the playoffs. For Justin Verlander, it's just the World Series. It's almost a flex to be like, yeah, I suck, but only in the World Series. Like, I have enough of a sample size where I get to the World Series often enough. I've pitched in the World Series over 3 different decades, so people notice that I'm not good in the World Series. Kind of a good problem to have, but I think the big takeaway is I don't want to necessarily say that the Phillies are overmatched, but on paper, the Astros are better, and I think in the series they've shown that they're better. And, even that Game 1 win for the Phillies, they had to grind it out. Like, they had to steal that game. Like, that was Houston's game to win. They should have won it. They didn't. All credit to the Phillies for that. But, Game 2 was all Houston, and that's – I don't know that's – I'm just interested to see how that environment works out once they do start playing these games in Philly.
So you mentioned that the Astros get booed everywhere. Philadelphia is obviously a very loud and proud fan base, as Mike can attest to. So where do you think neutral fans are falling with this matchup? Do you think, because, as a non-Philadelphia sports fan, I can't think of another non-Philly fan who's not been, yelled at by a Phillies or Eagles fan before. So who are people rooting for? Is everyone just anti-Astros?
I think I saw a graphic the other day. I don't know if it was based how they measure that thing, but it's like, they have keywords that are anti-Houston and pro-Philly, and I think it was 46 out of the 50 states were in favor of the Phillies winning the World Series. Which isn't that's not a huge surprise, but the thing about Philly fans, they're almost like they're like a dog with a new toy. And I even get afraid of being pro Philly because they're just like, this is our toy. We don't want you to touch it. We don't want you to come near it. When I went to those Phillies games, they were like coming after me. I wasn't wearing Philly stuff. I wasn't wearing Astros stuff. I was just wearing like a sweatshirt with a jacket over it, and they were booing me walking into the stadium. And I was like, dude, I'm here for you. Like, I'm here to, like, you know, report back of how, like, awesome the atmosphere is here. And they weren't having it. I think it was mostly because Padres fans were too scared to show up. They didn't want the smoke. So they were like, that guy is not wearing Philly stuff. We hate this guy. So, yeah, I feel like Philly fans, I'm sure they're like, yeah, thank you for the support and everything, but we don't need it. They're like, Philadelphia is its own, like, country. They don't care about anything outside of it.
So is it possible to root for neither team? Like, can we tie this thing? Maybe Game 7 gets postponed indefinitely if it's a 3-3 tie or something like that?
I think for me, it's easier to root for individuals in this World Series. Like, I want Bryce Harper to get a ring.
I love Kyle Schwarber. I mean, he already has one, but like I'm a Cubs fan, so I root for his continued success too. I'm with you. Like, maybe there's some other players that you are happy for, and you don't go for either team logo.
Yeah, like I love Kyle Schwarber too as a Red Sox guy. I mean, he was only in Boston for half a season, and he's already a legend there. But then, on the other side of things, Dusty Baker getting a ring. I think he's like 73 years old. Especially after after things went in the 2002 World Series, Giants Angels. It would be really cool to see Dusty get his moment in the sun. But yeah, there are definitely ways to have a rooting interest without necessarily rooting for a team. There's definitely big, like Dusty Baker getting a ring and Bryce Harper getting a ring. Those are two big baseball events.
Jared, you also have to remember, again, with Philly fans, that's where I spent 6 of my 9 years in the NFL, and they threw snowballs at Santa Claus. So, I mean, it's just, yeah. They're going to let you have it no matter what. If they probably wanted Santa to have an Eagles jersey on. That's probably why they threw a snowball at him. But you look at the way this team was built. I go back to 2018 when the principal owner, John Middleton, said, we're going to spend big money and we may even be stupid about it. I think I remember his quote being, and 5 players and $742 million later, they did that and it worked. You don't see this amount of players signed for this kind of money on one team, and then it worked. Usually it's such a cross your fingers. It's kind of like the Rams in the NFL where they just spent money, had no draft picks for the next 30 years, but it paid off. They won the Super Bowl. Is that how it's got to be here? I mean, they're in the World Series, but you have to close this deal to make all that spending worth it?
Yes and no. I don't think that they have to do it right now. Like, I think that their window is it's going to be open for a little bit. Like, this is not a win this year, all in this year type Philadelphia Phillies team. That's Dave Dombrowski's MO. Dave Dombrowski is a guy that goes out and he's happy to spend his owner's money. He's a guy that is willing to spend quote unquote stupid money. He did that in Boston. I think David Price was going to the Cardinals for like 180, and he ended up in Boston for 217. So he'll go way over asking to make sure that he gets his guy. He's great at identifying talent, which makes me terrified as a Red Sox fan, knowing that the Phillies might go after Xander Bogaerts this winter. And if it's not Bogaerts, there's plenty of other shortstops that are going to be on the market, from Dansby Swanson and Trey Turner and Carlos Correa. Like, the Phillies are not done. So even like I think I looked at what the Dodgers did. They won the World Series in 2020, and then they went out and they spent the money on Trevor Bauer. That didn't work, but they were aggressive in spending money on him. Then they went out and, they do what they had to do to continue to win. They're not just going to rest on we won, so like that's it. And that's kind of what I think we're going to see from the Phillies. Whether or not they win a World Series this October, I still think that they're going to be super aggressive in free agency to continue to extend that window. I mean, with Bryce Harper, he showed up day one. He said, I want a 13-year deal with no opt-outs. Like, I identified this place, this market, this team, and I want to be here, and I don't want there to be any chatter of, oh, he wants out or he's going to opt out at some point. But they've built a nice little core that they can continue to supplement through aggressive spending. And I totally – you don't hire Dave Dombrowski to trim your payroll. You hire Dave Dombrowski to spend a ton of money, and that's where he is right now.
How great is it to spend other people's money? I mean, it's got to be awesome.
The best.
Yeah. It's why I want your family to adopt me, Mike.
Ask my daughter about that one.
John Middleton also told Bryce Harper that he thinks he underpaid him. Bryce Harper's on a $330 million contract. Is that a true or false statement?
I mean, that's true. Like, you could so there's the website Fangraphs. You can look at Fangraphs, and they'll take like wins above replacement, and they have a way to calculate it like over to dollar amounts. And you look at the season that Aaron Judge just had, and it was worth $93 million. So you want to tell me that a dude like Bryce Harper puts up MVP caliber offensive numbers? He couldn't play defense this year because of the ligament tear, but there's a dude that puts up MVP caliber offensive production, and then he wins the NLCS MVP. Not just winning the MVP, but hitting the home run that sends you to the World Series. If you were to take the money and be like, all right, what is this worth to me? Getting like a player putting the team on his back and getting us to a World Series, Bryce Harper's underpaid.
God, and hit that home run. Isn't that what we all did as kids, man, in the backyard? I mean, and he got to live that. That's just such a cool thing. I'm gonna ask one off the World Series about payroll before I get back to it. So we think he should have got more. Aaron Judge is out there, bet on himself and won. Turned down $240 million contract, of which, quite honestly, if I said no to that, my wife would have slapped the spit out of my mouth. So that never would have happened. He did. He has a massive year, maybe save for obviously the postseason. What's a realistic number do you think he gets? I don't know where it is, but wherever he goes, what a realistic number?
Yeah, realistically, I think it's in the mid-threes. I think it could get into the high threes depending on the bidding war. You look at the market for a guy like Aaron Judge, it's going to be the Dodgers. It's going to be the Yankees trying to bring him back. It's going to be the Giants. The Mets, everyone is assuming will be in the market for him just because they have the money to spend, but we haven't heard much about the Mets' interest in actually going out and signing him. The Red Sox loom, but I don't think that they're going to be a serious player for Judge. But the teams that are in on him, I mean, the reports already were that the Giants are committed to being the top bidder. Then you have the Mets, who are more than capable of being the top bidder. I mean, Steve Cohen will spend whatever it takes to get the guy that he wants. It's just, is Aaron Judge the guy that he wants? We don't know. And then the Yankees, if George were still alive, he'd give him $500 million. He would just be like, listen, just get it done. I don't care what the number is. Just ask him what the number is, and we'll give him a blank check. But that's just not how Hal Steinbrenner in the new Yankee regime operates. So, yeah, I think what would be fair, somewhere in the 350 range. What he could end up getting could be a little bit more than that because it depends on what the Yankees value him as. I mean, and Aaron Judge has to look at it as, do I want the highest bid? Do I want to go where I'm happy? How much does legacy matter? Like, do I want to stay in New York? Is it unfinished business, or is it let me get out of here because that was just not an experience that I want to continue? We don't know. Like, Aaron Judge is obviously not going to sit down and take a lie detector test and be like, yeah, no, I love playing in New York. It's so fun getting booed by my home fans. It's the best. So, yeah, I think it's going to be somewhere in there, 350 to 375.
Not bad for the fact that he bet on himself, and he'll make over $100 million off of what that offer was at $240. That's pretty impressive. All right, now back. I always like asking this question about a big game, in this case, a big series. So we know who the stars are on both teams, Astros and Phillies. But there always seems to be that one or two players who people don't know very well. They're kind of the mid-level players, which I was for 9 years. So the me's of these teams who may step out, have that ability where someone says, oh, I didn't really know about that guy, and they could have a big game or a big series.
And who's most likely to start a radio career after they retire? Who are the Mike Golic?
Yeah.
I think it already happened. I think, if you were to ask me prior to the series, I would have gave you the name Kyle Tucker of the Houston Astros. Like, this is a guy that if I've seen people break down his swings side by side with Ted Williams, and there's not a lot of difference, which is crazy. And then in game one, he had that 3-hit game. 2 of them were homers. And he had the interesting quote before the World Series started where, they asked him about the opponent, the Philadelphia Phillies. And he was like, yeah, ideally we'd like to get it done in 4. But they're a really good team. So, it might take a couple more games. Like, he was just super candid about having absolutely no respect for the Philadelphia Phillies. But definitely an unsung hero of that Houston team just because, you've got the Bregmans, the Altuves, the Yordan Alvarez, like they're loaded. Like, that's a loaded lineup. So Kyle Tucker kind of falls by the wayside, but very talented player, very talented hitter, and you saw that in game 1 with the 2 homers.
All right, Jared, last one. Much like the first tee, they say in golf, though for me it's every tee box. I'm giving you a mulligan right now. You picked the Phillies in 7. We're 2 games in again as of this taping. We're 2 games in. It's 1-1. Will you take a mulligan and change your pick, or are you keeping it the same?
Man, I wish. I think there's a chance that after game 3, you know what? I'm gonna stick with it. I'm gonna stick with it because I just the 2-3-2 format in baseball. If you split those first 2 games, it's almost advantage for the road team. Like when you're going into Philly and you get to play there for 3 straight games, the momentum that you can build up there, if they can take 2 out of 3 in Philly, I still like Philly in 7. I do. And I do think that they're capable of winning 2 out of 3 at home here. So I don't know. I'm gonna stick with Philly in 7. Obviously the Astros are the better team. But yeah, I think the money pick is Philly in 7.
All right, keeping that extra ball in your pocket on the tee. I like that. Well done. Sticking with your pick. All right, Jared, we appreciate it.
Don't let Mike bully you into changing your pick.
Oh, like I said, I mulligan every hole. If I can't see it, I'm hitting another one. It don't matter to me. All right, Jared, appreciate the time very much, man. We'll look forward to talking again.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Mike, it was unfortunately not the most exciting weekend in NFL news, but it is the trade deadline, and the trade deadline in the NFL has become a little bit more interesting. Obviously, by the time people are listening to this, there may be more news that we haven't heard of yet, but TJ Hawkinson was traded from the Lions to the Vikings. The Bears traded a number of defensive players. What are your thoughts on the trade deadline becoming more of a thing in the NFL?
Let me tell you, Jess, for 23 years of doing morning radio and TV, we never got to talk about the trade deadline. All it was an arbitrary date where nothing happened. The baseball deadline was a ball. We had every analyst in the world coming on talking about who are the buyers, who are the sellers, who are the players getting moved and all that. Never in the NFL. I love the fact that there's being more moves now. And this isn't just moves of a player saying, oh, who's that player? These are known players going to teams that are trying to go over the top. And it kind of started with Christian McCaffrey going from Carolina. They sold off before that Robbie Anderson trading that wide receiver to Arizona. But then McCaffrey going to the 49ers, and he just did, the trifecta, throwing, catching, and running for a touchdown. I mean, what an incredible addition that was. So that was a great move. And then you just talked about Hawkinson going from Detroit to Minnesota. Interesting within the division for that to happen, but to help Minnesota, who is just distancing themselves from the Green Bay Packers right now and can probably secure that division in about 2 weeks. I'm being facetious, but I mean, that's a big lead they have. Robert Quinn going from Chicago to Philadelphia. Roquan Smith, the leading tackler in the league right now, going from Chicago to Baltimore. And the interesting thing about those 2 deals, Jess, both Quinn and Roquan, is basically Chicago picked up the tab. They're paying basically their entire salaries that they're owed for the rest of the year. So their new teams are barely paying anything. So this is really Chicago kind of clearing their ledger on things for next year in trading away these players. But yeah,
they need picks too.
Yeah, exactly. I'm ecstatic with this trade deadline because Quinn will definitely help Philadelphia, the best team in the NFC right now, maybe in all of football. Roquan will definitely help Baltimore without question. And Hawkinson, these are all quality moves for teams that are already playing well. But you know what? It's always good to have that one or two extra player to help put you over the top.
Yeah, one of the interesting ones that didn't get too much, too much coverage because it was later last week was Kadarius Toney going to the Chiefs.
Oh,
now,
right.
He was a
right.
first-round draft pick for the Giants. He really struggled with the Giants, and he's had some injuries. He hurt his hamstring this season, and so he hasn't played very much. But the Chiefs obviously are a dangerous passing threat in the NFL, so they obviously see some value there, and maybe a change of scenery is what this player needs. But I thought that was an interesting one too, that they're adding him to the wide receiver room in Kansas City.
Also tells you just what a dud it was in New York for that pick, right? I mean, they've been kind of on him since the beginning of not really, from your draft position, not really doing what you should do. So, maybe it's a grass is greener mentality now for him and for Kansas City, who basically to fill the slot of Tyreek Hill, they just have brought in right. So many different
Juju
receivers.
Smith-Schuster.
Yeah,
I mean, they really only need Travis Kelce, right? Like, they
Yeah.
don't need that many wide receivers if they have Travis Kelce healthy. But I anytime the Chiefs do anything, I tend to think that, it's like when Bill Belichick does something, you're like, well, this will probably end up working out for them.
Working out for him, yeah.
You trust that they make good decisions. Whereas, some other teams you maybe are like, what are they doing there?
And all I've heard after I called the Sunday game, Buffalo at Green Bay, where Buffalo won that game, is people are just saying, more to your point, I swear you brought this up before about the Super Bowl. Somebody said to me after that game, just let Kansas City and Buffalo play best of 7 to see who makes it to the Super Bowl.
Wouldn't that be awesome? All right, I'm back around on the 7-game Super Bowl series. I thought it was a good idea, and then I thought it was a bad idea, but now I think it's a good idea again. If it's just Kansas City and Buffalo, I will watch all 7 games of that.
Oh, you would, and then they would come out of the AFC and then the NFC. Is it Philadelphia? Is people, I don't know if they're buying into Minnesota yet, because you see this out of Minnesota, and then they fall back to being kind of a Midland team, but they're doing extremely well. I think we've already cast off Tampa Bay and Green Bay. I know I have. They're not coming back. They are what they are. I think San Francisco, Jess, is going to be a team that really starts to kind of take over because, and again, people say, oh, you're slating Seattle now, with what Seattle is doing, and I give them a ton of credit for it, but I think by the end of the season, I just think San Francisco is going to be the better team there.
Also, didn't we had Reed Fowler on before the season, and he had the Vikings as his NFC champion pick, I think, and Kirk Cousins as his MVP. I don't know if that has aged well, but the Vikings pick for winning that division certainly has.
Yes.
I don't think anyone saw the Packers' decline coming on so suddenly, and they have a chance to turn it around. Like, this has happened before in Aaron Rodgers' career. Remember when he told everyone RELAX, 4 years ago, whenever that was, when Mike McCarthy was still the head coach there. But something about them just seems fundamentally broken. Mike, we didn't talk about this last week. He made a comment about players on the team not wanting them to take practice reps because they were not performing well, wanting to limit their practice time. And I thought that was a little bizarre and also like the opposite. Like, isn't the old adage like, oh, first there, last out? Like, you want them to work harder, take more reps.
Usually it's like you take more reps.
First one in, last one out. I couldn't think of the phrasing of that.
I knew you'd get it. Everybody knows what you meant. It's like before this Buffalo game, the 2 weeks previous, the 2 games combined, they had 10 drops. If I'm a receiver dropping the ball, I'm catching 200 balls a day on the jug machine. I mean, I'm just having, one of the equipment managers feeding balls in there, and I'm just catching at all different angles. You're right. It shouldn't be, oh, you know what, I'm screwing up, so let me take less reps. I need to take more reps to get better and just do it over and over again. So, yeah, I mean, it's just not happening there. Plus, it could only be a wild card, so that obviously cuts your options down a little bit because Minnesota's running away with it. That's what's keeping Tampa Bay in this thing is the fact that their division is not great, and that. But I'll tell you what was great, that Atlanta-Carolina game. What a game that was, going into overtime. Carolina having a chance to win it, their kicker missing it, and then Atlanta winning it, but DJ Moore catching that touchdown pass where it tied the game and they needed an extra point to win it. And he selfishly and immaturely and dumbly, if that's a word, takes his helmet off just so he can look into the crowd and have everybody say, "Look at me." I mean, and as soon as he took his helmet off, Jess, I was in the hotel in Buffalo getting ready for my game, and I'm watching that. He scores, takes his helmet off, and I just said, well, that extra point is 15 yards longer now. And, of course, the kicker misses it. I think it's Pinheiro, I think it is, misses the extra point. So it stays tied, and they go to overtime and eventually lose. That was unbelievable.
Well, okay, so I first of all, the taking off the helmet thing, like, if you're on the field, that is, you're not supposed to do that. But I also read afterwards that since he was not on the field when he did it, he was already out of the back of the end zone. It shouldn't have counted as a penalty.
Can't do
it.
Is
that not?
Nope. It can't do it in the celebration. You can't take your helmet off. I mean, defenders have done it when they're disgusted. They'll take their helmet off as they're going off the field, and they'll get a flag. It's a rule. You need to know. Jess, he couldn't have taken it off quick enough. He literally dropped the ball so both hands could get to his chin strap so he could take his helmet off. I hope he got all the adulation he wanted because it cost his friggin' team. Now, should your kicker still make the extra point? Yeah, you would hope he would. Should your kicker then make it in overtime when you have a chance to win it? Yeah, he should. So he missed that as well. But still, to be in that position, he put him in that position because of that penalty. But that was one of the best games of the weekend. So we'll see. Again, so again, as a taping of this, it's still kind of during the end of the trade deadline. So we'll see if any more moves are made. But I love the fact that some of these moves have been made. And speaking of moves being made, F1 was in Mexico City, which I can't wait to talk to people out there because I'm calling the Mexico City game, Arizona and San Francisco, in a few weeks. So I want to know places to go. But Max Verstappen, he does it. He was tied with Schumacher and, with 13 wins for the year. Now I'm drawing a blank. It's his last year. He's retiring this year. The dude that's retiring
Sebastian
this year.
Vettel.
Yeah, Vettel. I think Vettel had a year where he had 13 wins. And now Max has 14 wins. So Max has the record. This is the Max Verstappen year, no doubt about it. But as usual, Jess, in F1 racing, there is drama.
Always. I mean, this race was not one of the more exciting races on the calendar, but there was a lot of off the track, off the circuit drama lingering because of the whole 2021 cost cap debacle with Red Bull. They went over their spending for last season, and the FIA handed down a penalty this week. They're going to pay $7 million in a fine that is not going to come out of next year's salary cost cap. So it's a separate fine, and then they're going to get a 10% reduction in development time. Christian Horner was very mad about it. He was not happy. And then on top of all of that, and on top of all the press conferences where he was telling everyone else that they owed Red Bull an apology. Red Bull said that they're no longer doing interviews with Sky Sports because of Ted Carrabis, who, full disclosure, I am a big fan of. I met him in Miami during the race and actually read a couple lines for one of his on-air packages. So I like Ted Carrabis. Ted Carrabis said in Austin that Max Verstappen, the word he used was robbed Lewis Hamilton of his 8th title last season. And Red Bull feels that Sky Sports has been cheapening their 2021 win all season. So they have an indefinite boycott now on the major network that that covers their races and distributes the races to the U.S. and to other countries too. Sky Sports Germany, Sky Sports Italy. So that was a fun little thing happening in the background this weekend in Mexico City, and probably will continue to the end of the year. But I don't think it's going to last very long, Mike, because I think Christian Horner really likes being on TV.
All right, so that's what I was going to ask you. What are the legs of this thing? But you may have just answered it in that last one.
I mean, so last year Verstappen said the same thing. He said he wasn't going to talk to Netflix anymore, and then they came to an agreement, and now he's talking to Netflix again. And Sky Sports does have a lot of influence over the way the races are covered, and I think that there are fans that believe that they have a British bias. So, they're biased towards Lewis Hamilton and Lando Norris and the other British drivers on the grid. And that's fair. I think that would probably be natural to have a bias towards people from your own country if you're the broadcaster. But I don't think that anything that Ted Kravitz said was not in line with what the FIA has said after last year's finale. They went so far as to sack the race director who made the final call on the final lap of the race. And if you do that, then you're implicitly saying he made a mistake. You don't fire someone if they didn't do something that was not in error. So I don't think it was necessarily, but I think this is like a culmination of what they believe. Like, they've been slighted all year by the network. So I just don't think it's going to last very long, because I do think that Sky does ultimately have a lot of, influence, and Red Bull's going to want to get their story out there and get their people on TV.
Yeah, nobody doesn't want the pub going forward, so you hate to put yourself in position for that. So congrats to Max Verstappen for the race. We'll see how far the drama goes as they're finishing out their season. And since we're talking about racing, Jess, we have to mention what went on in NASCAR. We'll stay in racing, and as we're looking for the last race in Phoenix Raceway on Sunday, what went on in Martinsville with Ross Chastain did like a live Ricky Bobby. I mean, with his racing style. He was on the last lap. He was behind Denny Hamlin. I don't know if people didn't see this. He was behind Denny Hamlin on the last lap, and he needed to beat Denny Hamlin to get into the championship 4. Right? He needed to beat him, and he ran the last lap again like Ricky Bobby with no regard for car and or body. Talk about putting the pedal to the metal, and he later admitted that he kind of ran it like the NASCAR Chase for the Cup 05 on the Nintendo GameCube, where if you wreck a car, nothing bad happens because it's a game. This is real life, and dude just absolutely put the pedal to the metal.
I truly, I know I'm like a F1 fan, a racing fan, and I do generally understand how these cars work, at least the Formula One cars. I don't understand how that happens. I'm watching this clip and I'm like, how did he pull off this maneuver and go so much faster in the outside lane than all these other cars and sneak by the 4th car to get in that final spot? It's just the more I watch it, the more I don't fully understand or comprehend how that is physically possible. From the physics standpoint, Mike, I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, if you haven't seen it, it's all over, obviously, Twitter, YouTube, and our old teammate at ESPN, Ryan McGee, tweeted out after he showed a bunch of different clips, whether they were cartoons or movies, of cars just riding the outside wall, and it's great. It was absolutely amazing what went on there. So congrats to him. We'll see how much it pays off for him Sunday in that last race. I want to finish on Halloween candy, but really quickly, we should note, because it just crossed the line, and we might as well talk about it, even though tomorrow you'll have seen it already. The Nets have fired Steve Nash. This was a situation, remember, where Kevin Durant basically said, I need Nash or people gone if I'm going to come back. And the owner was on the side of the GM and Nash and said, no, they're staying. And obviously Durant is there as well. Nobody traded for him. And so they thought they were all going to get together and keep going and work it out. But not so much. The Brooklyn Nets are sitting at 2-5 and 7 games in, which always amazes me. So you always wonder. And we knew there was already drama. Durant wanted Nash gone in the offseason. So now they're 2-5, and he actually gets his wish now of Nash being gone. But you always wonder about these moves just so early in the season. Yeah,
well, the team hasn't been playing well. They haven't been selling a lot of tickets. And then, like you said, there's been off-the-court drama. And then, of course, this week and this weekend, there was this Kyrie Irving situation where he posted an anti-Semitic video to his Instagram and then doubled down on it at a press conference. And the Nets owner condemned it. The NBA put out a statement where they didn't even name Kyrie Irving, but said that they condemn hate speech. And then Steve Nash, I think, he said, I hope we get through it together. There's an opportunity for us to grow and understand new perspectives, but none of it really addressed the danger and toxicity of these claims that are in Kyrie's post that he put up and that he's, kind of doubling down on. He didn't really even seem to feel like he understood why it was bad to put that on his platform where he has 18 million Instagram followers, and denied that he was kept using the word promoting, because that's what the reporter was saying, Nick Friedel, who works for ESPN, who had like this back and forth with him. But when you're posting something to your profile, then yeah, in a way, like that's what the definition of promoting means. It doesn't mean that you're like wearing a hat with like the logo on it, like that kind of promotion. But he's putting very toxic and dangerous ideas on his own platform. And so, I think this speaks to a larger dysfunction with the team, and maybe the Steve Nash firing is just a performance issue. I know that there were people who were questioning why he even was hired to that job in the first place, because he didn't have a lot of head coaching experience. But I do think that the Kyrie Irving situation needs to be addressed in a much more direct and forceful way from the NBA and from the players and from from his own organization, because I don't think there's any excuse for what he posted on his social media platform.
Yeah, and again, I brought this up because it was a tweet from Woj, and it said sources are saying, but if Woj tweets it, it's happening. I mean, listen, the NBA goes to Woj for info, so that's just how powerful Woj is out there. So a different tenure starting there, because everybody keeps waiting. Oh, what they have in New Jersey with those stars there, they should be winning championships, and it's been very, very underachieving. So they'll have a new coach, and we'll go on from there. All right, Jess. So Halloween has come and gone. I do miss the days when I was doing Mike and Mike that we would have costumes every year. My wife was actually the one that would get us costumes, and they were very authentic. So I'm a big fan of Halloween. We had a ton of kids come to our house here at Notre Dame last night. And I love seeing the eyes light up, because we have them in a big like plastic pumpkin, and we have all the candy in there. It's huge. And I love putting the pumpkin out there and telling the kids, pick whatever one you want, and love seeing their eyes light up and them saying, oh, wow, you have full-size candy bars. And I'm like, you're damn right we do. That's what we do here.
Which full-size candy bars did you hand out? Because I have to say, one candy brand sent me 2 big boxes of full-size candy bars a month ago, and I brought them to the studio, and they're already gone. So no one handed those out.
Oh, we have the big ones. We had were bags of M&Ms, regular peanut M&Ms, Kit Kat, Twix, Snickers, Three Musketeers, Milky Way, Hershey bars. Wow. All those.
I would have taken a Twix.
Would you take? That's what is always interesting too. Is I love giving kids a choice, because I like seeing what they go for. You know what was big was the kind of the dip thing that's the powder and the little stick, and you kind of
fun dip.
That's it. That's what it's called, fun dip. A lot of people like that as well. And also we had the 2-cup Reese cup. Not the.
Yeah.
We did have mini candy for like
size.
There's a lot of moms that come out and their kids like 2, and they don't want their kid eating a full size Milky Way bar. So we have the smaller candy for them. But I was a big. There was and I always say this every year. I go on my rant every year about it's one day. Let the kids have the candy. There is an orthodontist office around us that actually was doing a buyback. Bring your candy in. I'm like, man, back in the day, I don't want anybody to do anything to any places, but boy, back in the day, that would not have gone over well. Buyback. Give us your candy and we'll give. I mean, come on. I just can't stand
So he can
that.
eat it all, please.
I mean, just now, where you live, do you have any trick-or-treaters?
No, not a single one. I had to dress up as NSYNC for the Le Batard show, and that was my only Halloween partaking this year.
You
Didn't
were
even carve a
NSYNC?
pumpkin.
Oh, nice.
I was Justin Timberlake. Yeah, not a great hairstyle on me. Probably will not wear that wig again. But it was 2 hours, and then I was back in my regular clothes, and I went home.
Oh, there you go. Okay, I did not dress up. We just obviously had all the kids that were dressed up. The dogs were out. We put a fence up by our porch so the dogs can be outside and the kids like petting the dogs. Yeah, very, very nice. Good
I want to trick or treat at your house.
Yeah, let me tell you, it's worth it. It's worth it. Well, I'll say this though, Jess, is we do have extra candy. We rarely run out of candy because we don't want to be that house either that all of a sudden runs out of candy and your lights are off and your door is closed. So when you and your boyfriend come here this weekend, there will be some candy still available. Just so you know.
Ooh, all right. Candy and coffee. Can't wait to see you, Mike.
So we will trade your treats you're going to make for me and candy that I will give to you.
Amazing.